Yo, what is up? Joshua Casper back at you with another video tutorial. Today, I'm gonna be showing you how to get super fat, big trap or hip hop brass hits, or really any genre. I don't really care what genre you're making, but the point is to make some brass that sounds like this. All right, so it's really massive. It sounds really good. It's thick. You know, there's a bit of processing that goes into it, but hopefully it won't take too long to show you how I do it. Anyway, obviously there's a million ways to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn on this contact instrument right here. And this is Forzo from Heavyocity. It's a brass instrument, and I have the brass Ensemble loaded here. And I've just got, if I fold this down, an F0, an F1, and an F2. And this is what that sounds like. Okay, what's really important here, for me anyway, is to make sure there's no reverb. So that's a really, really great sounding reverb, but I don't want that because when we do some of the processing that's going to come later, the reverb tail is just really going to make things more difficult. So you don't want reverb or delay before we start processing it. Now, inside of Forzo, you also have control over the release, and you want a relatively short release. If you bring it up, and then if we pull it down, so we want it, again, we want it fairly short. I believe I had mine at like 1.3 seconds here, and that's pretty good. So if I go ahead and play this in conjunction with the beat we have, you can hear how it's not really hitting. It's not slapping like I need it to. So what we want to do is freeze that track. You might say, Josh, if you just do one, you know, you'll cut down on how much you have to do. Well, inside of Forzo, it actually has round robin capabilities, which means it's slightly different every time you do it. And I kind of like that. It has the 6 system round robin, but sometimes it repeats. So if you really want a good sounding brass hit, like kind of going throughout your beat, just go ahead and, you know, make sure to use that round robin system if your synth has it or your library has it. I don't know what you're using, but what I'm going to do is just come in here now and flatten that. So there we go. This is essentially this. So I'm actually going to come in here and that's frozen. I'm going to turn it off, and now we're just going to work on this audio. So that sounds pretty good, right? And once we process it a little bit more with some distortion and saturation, it's going to sound even better. But what I want to do is actually come in, and I'm going to make it like this. And what I want to do is take the play position and just bring it over. All right. So we got that and that. Now, that is a huge difference. If I solo this, that and that, it's not punchy here. It's kind of got this lead in. You can actually see it visually. And that one's more abrupt. And we want to do that for each one of these. So I'm going to do it here, and again, pull it over, and you can kind of see where it really comes in. Okay, and I'll do these two here in the video. And then, you know, like I said, you'd want to do all 8 of those just so you have that variety of the round robin. If you want that, maybe you want it to be more robotic, more repetitive, but I like the subtle variation. You can actually see here in the waveforms that they're different. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this one over too. Great, and then for this one, duplicate those, and with the beat. Already light years ahead of where we were, and all we had to do was just kind of lop off that intro bit. So the next thing I want to do is add a Transient Shaper. So inside of my plugins, I've got a really great one that's easy to use from Kilohertz, and it's called the Transient Shaper. So I'm just going to drag that. And what this does is it will boost up the attack bit to make it hit even harder. So this is it normally, but if I take the attack and let's put it up way too high, you hear how it's more punchy there. So we want to put that in a little bit. So it's adding just a little bit more punch. And again, I mean, we can go really, really punchy too. So sustain, we'll just bring it down. It will make it a little bit shorter. So if you happen to have a sample with a little bit of release, a longer release, or if you have some reverb baked in, you can use this one to kind of dampen that. Again, it's really going to help later on with the processing, but we already took care of that in the initial stage. And that's something I want to point out before moving forward. You want to take care of things in the initial stage. It's like when you're recording a vocal, getting the good recording is your first priority, then processing the vocal comes after. If you don't start with something that's awesome, it's kind of difficult in some cases to make it really awesome. Okay, pump inside of the kilohertz one will actually make a little dip after the transient to make the transient part stick out even a little bit more. But we don't, again, I don't want that. I just want to boost up the attack transient. And that's what we're doing there. The next thing I'm going to add is a plugin called Devil Lock by Sound Toys. And we're going to be using a couple of Sound Toys. But I'm going to use Devil Lock Deluxe, and I'm going to put it on there. And this thing just really makes stuff gritty. It's got a tone control. It's got a mix knob. There is a smaller version just called Devil Lock, which doesn't have a mix control and doesn't have the darkness and also doesn't have a release time. These are important for what we're doing. So I'm using the bigger brother here. But if you're kind of on a budget, you can easily get around it by just going for Devil Lock. And obviously links to everything I'm using in the video description. But I want a fast release time. Again, I don't want to make that release really long. And I'm going to put the crunch up to around 3. And the crush, I'm going to pull all the way down. I like the way the crunch sounds over the crush. And darkness, I want at 0. And mix right around 6. Let's just see what that sounds like. So that's with, without. With, without. Now, let's really pump up the crush just so we can hear what it's doing. Okay, so that's what it's doing. I just want a little bit of that right now. So right around 2, right around 3, maybe in between. Darkness just kind of makes it dull. So that's not what we're looking for here. We want things to be pretty bright. And the mix, obviously, if we put it up to... So I'm going to go right around 6. Great. And the next thing I'm going to add is another Softube plugin called Decapitator. And I'm going to drop that on there. And there's actually a preset in here under bass called Beefy. And yeah, so Decapitator is, again, a really, really great distortion saturation plugin. And we have control over a lot of different stuff, including the distortion styles down here. What I'm going to do is, again, pull down the mix. And I'm going to bring the tone. See how bright it is? How dark it is? But it's really doing a lot more than just that. So I'm going to actually bring it right around the middle, but maybe lean towards bright. Very cool. And actually, I also want to switch up the style. Let's bring up the duet. So you can hear here that E is actually the punchier of the lot. So that's what I'm going to run with. Bypass with it. So again, it's getting bigger. Okay. And the last thing I want to do is one more Sound Toys plugin is Little Plate. And it's just a really great sounding plate reverb that's simple to use. And this is where we add our release and our tail using this. I'm going to pull up the low cut. Perfect. So let's listen to what that sounds like with the track now. Okay, so it sounds great. And that's pretty much the tutorial. What I'm going to do now is group all these together and then just bypass them. So this is where we started. And this is where we ended. And if I solo. And obviously, you know, there's a big gain difference there, and I'm not going to go through having to turn it up. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys can tell how different the sound is overall. But that sounds like a great trappy hip hop brass stab for, you know, this style of music or whatever style of music you're working on. All right, so there you go. That's a quick tutorial on how to make big, beefy trap style brass stabs using all of the instruments and effects that I used here. I'm going to leave links to everything in the video description. You can use other ones. This is just my process and how I did it. And I think it sounds really great, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions and if you have any tutorials ideas, because I'm going to start posting more to this channel. I've been kind of slacking on it, and I'm really trying to beef it back up. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.